He records folk music under an assumed name because he says it helps him with his feelings, for example. That's one way.
That's, really?
The songs, oh, they're pretty good. I mean, I'm his dad, so maybe I'm biased, but they're pretty good. But they're becoming more honest.
So this is episode or season 1, episode 2, and we have Jenn Welch on the show. And
waving.
Yeah, there's no. I don't record any video. This is all audio. But and you're a podcaster. You have a podcast, LADYHD podcast, correct? Which
podcast for distractible women. It's not women in high def. It's women with ADHD. So yeah.
I just got that today. I kind of met you because you did an interview with Stephen Conrad a while back, and we exchanged some messages or something, and I thought it was Lady HD, and literally today when I went on Instagram and I was looking for you to message you, I just got it. I was like, oh, like ADHD, Lady HD.
That makes me feel very proud as a person who loves puns. I like when they're a little hard to latch onto. So you made my morning.
Yeah.
So I did. I interviewed Stephen on that on my podcast for women with ADHD because like 40 episodes in, here's what happened. Sorry, guys. It's 8 a.m. and my meds haven't kicked in yet. But Ultra City Smiths was starting. Right? And there's like a real lack of any sort of I love podcasts about TV shows. I love them. And there was just nothing. I couldn't find anything or any promo stuff. And there was just nothing. And so I just on a whim, messaged him on Twitter and was like, I have this podcast. It has nothing to do with television, but I love you. And I want to talk about your show. And he just was like, yeah, sure, whatever. Tell me when. And it was and we had this amazing conversation. And I found your podcast, Joe, in the lead up to that, because I just kind of wanted to hear how he was in an interview, you know what I mean? And I loved what you were doing with your little short music podcast. And I was like, oh, this is so cool. And and now here we are. And hello, Mike, I'm meeting you for the first time. And I'll stop talking now. I'll let you guys take back over. Sorry. Go ahead.
So me and Jen haven't really talked yet, but I also found her podcast because of the same reason she made it, because Ultra City Smith is so, there's very lacking of podcast coverage, and thank you for doing the interview with Stephen Conrad. Thank you so much, and I'm so glad to have you today, man.
Yay! Yeah. Thank you. I'm glad to be here. It was nice to have an opportunity to sort of revisit Patriot. I feel like doing that interview with him was I felt a little bit like Icarus afterwards, where I was like, I flew too close to the sun, and now I need to take a step. I just was I kind of had to take a break, because it was how you get that sort of, how do I want to say that feeling? I don't know how to explain it. It was just I got to talk to this person whose work I admire so much. And it's you do this thing that you always kind of hope you'd be able to do, and you have this great conversation with this person. And then life goes back to normal and you're just oh, life is back to normal, So, So when I saw you guys were doing this, I was just oh my God, I want to talk to people about the show. And it gave me an opportunity to get back in. So I watched episode 2 last night and 1 earlier this week. But anyways, hi.
Hey, so
hi.
So me and Mike are, we bonded over the show Patriot a long time ago. Before we get started about the episode, how did you get into Patriot? What was your journey to finding it and all that stuff? Just real quick.
Well, okay. I kept seeing that little show card showing up on Amazon Prime, right, with Michael Dorman just sitting there in his suit and with the word Patriot, and I'd kind of like roll my eyes at it because I'm like, oh, another one of those shows. And I went through a year in 2017. I went through that year where my dad had passed away in February, and I kind of took like a sabbatical that year. And by sabbatical, I mean that I'm a freelancer and I just like emptied out my savings and didn't work because I just like needed to like recuperate after that. So a lot of that year was just spent like processing feelings, watching all the television, And it got to the point near the end of the year where I was like, okay, I've watched all of the television. And I finally I clicked on the Patriot thing and I was blown away. Like I'm a huge Coen Brothers fan. I'm a huge Wes Anderson fan. I'm a huge fan of just chopped up narratives and playing with time and just and also a huge fan of feelings. I'm a comedian. Emotions, I think, are like the funniest things that they're just hilarious, right? And so to have this show that's about a government operative who is incredibly good at his job, save for the fact that he just feels his feelings too hard, and how that affects him. And then every character kind of dealing with their emotions and kind of how it pours into things. And I feel like it just hit all these buttons for me. And so that just kind of became, I think I've rewatched the series maybe 5 times now. It's kind of just one of those shows I keep going back to. And it's kind of, the show is so dense that it's every time you go back to it, it's what am I noticing that's new? Finding new, not only finding new things, but also where am I in my life right now this time that I'm watching it, and what's affecting me this time that didn't affect me before, One of the things that I actually, between the first time and the second time I watched it, I actually had a head injury. I slipped in the shower and ended up with a pretty bad concussion where I had to do a bunch of rehab and I had to do all this stuff. And I think it was maybe the third or fourth time I watched the series because of, I had this head injury I was working through, that the Steven stuff finally was oh my God. This woman and the way she's talking about him and the way that, there's a lot of his companion in this episode. And also the way that just throughout the series, not to get, I don't know if we're getting too spoilery, but the way that Steven, not Steven, the employee with the head injury, but Stephen Conrad, the way that Steven kind of visually depicts John's increasingly concussed nature throughout the series, with double vision and things getting blurry and things, whatever. I just it's yeah. So that's, I'm in love with all of it. Yeah.
I wonder if anyone has watched it. What's that?
You can. Oh yeah. I'm just gonna ask. Is it accurate, what Steve depicts in the show, to compare to your experience?
Yes, there are obviously my injury wasn't as bad as Steven's, but there are just certain things I went through a period of time. I still have a hard time stopping talking once I start talking. That's a thing. But I went through a period of time with I don't know why my hands are doing this right now. Or I don't know. Or I'm just the sort of I was, this time around I was really laughing at the opening the laptop thing, that. I mean, obviously I know how to open my laptop, but the executive functioning like that you take for granted when you have a healthy brain that's not injured. Like, you know, like there can be days where I'm like, oh, I really need, like, just like, you know, that you need to do something, but that one tiny thing to get the thing started is like the piece of the puzzle that's like eluding you, you know? So that just was very relatable to me. And yeah. So
we picked a good episode to have you then. This is
right. I'm very triggering.
Yeah, but I was gonna say, I wonder if anyone has watched Patriot just once. I feel like you can't just watch it once. Everyone I know who's watched it
you can, yeah.
has seen it multiple
Yeah.
times.
I'm doing my first time right now.
Nice.
Yeah, with my girlfriend. Yeah.
Oh,
I went through. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Well, Perpetual Grace Limited, which is the series we haven't mentioned. We briefly talked about, and then Perpetual Grace is like the one that he had between those two series on Epix, and that one I went through like a 2-month period where that was like all that I watched because I was like, I can't get over this. It's like too good. Yeah. But anyways, yeah. So episode 2, C19.
Yeah, C19. This So this episode, at the very beginning, we get introduced to the guy who will later be his musical partner. We start off with him trying to sell a kayak.
Trying to sell a kayak, trying to apologize to his ex-wife for not paying child support, trying to sell a kayak but not show that there's a hole in the kayak while he's trying to sell it. And I love that there's like a mention of the Craigslist at some point, but then
Gently Love, right?
Yeah, Gently Love.
And Seaworthy.
Totally seaworthy. And then I feel the cut to from the kayak sale to in the pub where he's watching the instructional YouTube video about tying the rope.
Oh,
Is that legal?
And we don't know
Like
yet. We don't know yet what the rope is for. That's so I don't know if we're going to are we talking about that.
I think I know like right away when that happened.
Yeah.
And I was like thinking whether it's like legal in YouTube to do that.
I know, right?
I was wondering. Yeah.
Well, can I say what the rope is for, or are we like?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Go for it.
Like, okay, so skip ahead 15 seconds if you don't want to know what the rope is for. The rope. Who's listening to this who hasn't watched the series like 15 times? Okay. But the fact that like this is like what I love about what he does is that he finds like the like if this then what else like kind of in both directions from a situation, like in the sort of like aftermath, but then also like leading up to it. Like at some point, Rob Saperstein had to figure out how to tie a noose in order to try and hang himself. And so what does that process look like for him? And what it looks like for him is sitting with a giant rope in a pub, like watching this video.
YouTube tutorials.
And it's so sad funny that like it just like makes your heart, it just makes your heart happy in an awful way. You know what I mean? Just like that, like the thought to like cover that moment that you wouldn't normally see, you know, because it is absurd. It's absurd. So yeah, that's, I just love.
And then like, and then he heard John's voice, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what saved him.
John's voice.
Yeah, not to jump too far ahead, but what you were just saying about the emotional thing, that this whole episode is filled with stuff that's really emotional, like really touching and heartbreaking, but also funny, but still maintains the sadness, like the PTSD guy, like all the stuff that he's the characters that he introduced. Like there's always really heavy, sad stuff. But the scenes are really funny, but it doesn't take away from like the heaviness of it somehow.
No, it's this really like tight. It's like a really like lovely tightrope walk that he's able to hit, and I feel like it's because he does a good job at like staying connected to like the humanity of everybody, right? Because we are all like we're just absurd, like we're absurd creatures to begin with, and I feel like in comedies and action movies, I feel like there's a tendency to like forget that, and then you end up like straying away from that sort of like combo of the two. It's 8 a.m. I'm sorry. But it's really like masterful. It's really fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, so this guy, he fits right into the Stephen Conrad world. I mean, he's a guy who's broken. I mean, we see in the first episode with Cool Rick, we see that stuff with his family, and everyone's totally broken. And he's definitely hang on, let me see where I have notes from the episode that I have here. So yeah, he's got the sad wife. It's, you know, he's got the estranged wife, kids, the stuff that he's trying to deal with. We kind of get these sad backstories from all the characters. But he so he's back in Milwaukee in this episode.
Before we get there, can I mention a few things?
Yeah.
About the cold open? Yeah, and so you might see that the cold open, it's kind of like has a different aspect ratio, right? It's kind of more wider, and it's shot on like a anamorphics too, which is like a different characteristic to like normal Patriot in season 1, right? It's more wider, and this is the introducing of that, and in season 1 they use it to tell like that's the event is taking place in the past, you know. So I think that's pretty cool, you know, because in I'm not sure if you guys seen Better Call Saul, but when it sets in the past, it will be like in the future. I'm sorry, it will be like black and white, so we can tell it right away that it's not in the present day. And I love that when TV does that, it's pretty cool. And yeah, another detail is like and I think it's James Whittaker who's the DP, the cinematographer who's the one who like came up with that idea to shot the cold open with anamorphics, and I think that's pretty cool. Yeah.
And this is 2 years.
I love that.
This is 2 years after the pilot, right?
It came out. Episode 2 came out on 2017, I think, along with the rest of the season 1. Yeah, and you know, in the like tutorial video of like the rope, the knot, right? We can also hear the voice, and it's every time there's like a man talking in the like news or anything like that, I feel like the sound of the man who's speaking is similar, and I believe it's the guy who played Ron, like Mike O'Connell, the Ron who's like the the helper guy.
Yeah.
You know, it always sounds like that if you like, listen to those things. Yeah, that's just fun fact.
Which one's Ron again?
The one who's always trying to get the lazy boy.
Yeah. Okay.
The guy who won Jiu-Jitsu too. Yeah.
Okay, so he's doing all the background voices. That's cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, now we have John Lakeman back in Milwaukee trying to get back on the travel team. Right?
Yes.
He's got to get back in with his guys so he can get back to Luxembourg. I'm trying to think what and he's staying in this little apartment that they have furnished with a little blow-up mattress.
It's not properly outfitted. Is that when his dad is sitting there with him?
I'm gonna fire someone.
Yeah. You don't even have a chair.
Yeah. Could you think you could get me a chair? Okay, and then when he gets back to work, that's kind of when we get to Steven and his therapist, which is one of my favorite, if not my favorite, kind of storyline throughout that whole thing. I'm in love with that therapist lady.
She's amazing. I don't know how she's like not. I don't know, her comedic timing, her what's the word I want to use? Sternness,
like the way
her sternness, but like her matter of factness, I guess, or her abruptness is just like so funny. It's so great.
Yeah, where is she? Where is this girl?
Yeah.
Has she done anything since Patriot?
I have
I'm
no
not
idea.
sure, but she's so good, right?
She's incredible. Yeah, I mean, I work with a lot of physical therapists and occupational therapists and speech therapists. I feel like I know that person.
Yeah.
She's like,
Yeah.
she cares a lot, but she's really stern and strict and really matter of fact. I just
We get to see her like say about like it's going to be hard like in Rocky. Coworkers, have we seen Rocky? And that's just the first. Like she's clearly a movie fan. We can see she referencing the movie again, like in Pulp Fiction, right? In later episodes.
Yeah.
And that's just a cool
how,
detail. Yeah.
Yeah, and she's like, you see Rocky, the first time he goes up the steps, it's really rough. And then you see the end, and he does it. What you don't see is the middle. All of the painstaking, grueling, like the slow middle, the hard work. And it's just like so funny. Yeah, because you expect her to be like maybe like a little like comforting or reassuring, especially with Steven standing right there. But yeah.
She said like, I don't want to have to keep telling you that, Stephen. You should already getting better at that. Yeah, that's so funny. So unexpected, yeah.
Yeah, she's kind of mean to him. And Leslie, for some reason, it seems that he has some kind of affinity for Stephen.
Yeah.
Well, I think we find out why a little bit later on.
There's next episode, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and so yeah, like estranged family relating to that, kind of seeing maybe somebody that he loves in this kid, and he really is attached to. I love when Leslie's in the back of the room during this whole speech, and then he's like, "Good luck, son," and she's like, "You can't just say things at him without making sure he's prepared." He has to make that decision. To go speak to his face in front of everybody. I
guess he likes him for those reasons. Also, his kind of hatred for Lakeman, and he is like. He's the guy who is going to have Lakeman's job.
Yeah. Well, I think we may have. Did we talk about the bathroom? The bathroom scene in the beginning too. A Macmillan Man. Yeah. Is that the first time we hear that?
Yeah. Oh no. I think. Oh yeah. Maybe the first Macmillan Man. Yeah. I think.
Yeah. There's like one of those like wonderful scenes in the bathroom where it's just like a series of people coming up to John while he's attempting to do something. In this instance, take a piss. But like Dennis is like freaked out about like the detective. Leslie is like upset about him not
C19.
C19, the parking spot.
C19. His second home.
Yes. And then, of course, like Birdbath has been like in the stall the whole time again.
There's some great scenes of the urinal.
Yeah, so many great.
Yeah, it's in season 1. It's always the urinal where they have a conversation somehow, and in season 2, it's like a train. I'm not sure that's where they always meet, and that's kind of cool. Each season, it's kind of got its own thing. Yeah, and the way Michael Dorman delivered like. But after Leslie asked Lakeman, "Are you a Macmillan Man?" and Michael Dorman was like, "Oh man, yeah." That's like got me laughing. Oh, man, yeah.
He has the best delivery. And then we in the office we also meet is this the first time we meet the HR guy?
Yes.
Yeah.
This guy, like the super nice, sweet HR guy.
You have too many numbers. He's like,
extra digit. Yeah.
Yeah, I must have made a mistake. Oh, but it's actually on your card. You have too many digits, which is just.
I don't know how you've been using it all these years.
Yeah. So basically, he can't get paid because his social security card has 10 digits on it, and I think it just kind of goes to show. I feel like. There's something like so relatable about maybe for me, I don't know, in my weird life, about being put in a position where you're supposed to do something that's difficult, but like all of the support around you is just kind of like not as skilled or as competent as they should be. And like now you're just constantly like who was it that made him the social security card with 10 digits on it, you know? And now he has to like deal with this.
And the jellyfish.
And another jellyfish. Yes. Yeah.
And this is the second time like the sloppiness of the government we seen in the show. The first episode, John told Kubrick that they sent the wrong address for Macmillan and he has to run and everything. This one, it's like extra digit. Like, oh my god, that's unbelievable.
Well, and then also not knowing that they're going to take. Oh, sorry, my phone alarm is. This is when I normally wake up. My phone alarm. Okay. Also not realizing that for this type of trip, they're going to take a Delta flight instead of a private plane, you know, and how that like spirals into everything. Just like these things that somebody should have been aware of, but now he has to deal with it. And then even when he does complete the job, he gets the bag to the guy, and the guy is working for the person that they don't want to have the money. So.
Yeah, and then they have moved their parking spot into like an abandoned warehouse area, and this is kind of where we first see is this the first scene with the big concrete pipes where he's sitting in the pipe?
Yeah.
This introduces that, which becomes an ongoing thing.
Yeah.
John's comfort place. Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if is there some kind of symbolism there, where he's sitting there in the pipe. You just keep.
I guess circle is everything in this show, right? Yeah.
I do. Yeah.
And I think I saw a picture of Stephen Conrad rewriting scripts on the pipe too.
Oh yeah.
He's literally John Legman for real.
I love that. Yeah. I mean, it is good too, where like they get these shots of him like sitting in the pipe. There's one like in the near the end of the episode where it's like you see like Dennis like walking from a distance, but before he can get to John in the pipe, Leslie like pops in from the side and like says something to him again about the parking spot or something that he's like annoyed with, or, you know, you better get up to date with your flim flam shacks or like whatever it is, you know.
I think it's I think Legman is out from work before the time.
Oh, yes.
We usually take it all the way to 5, John.
We usually take it all the way to 5. And then Leslie's out, but Dennis is still walking. And then Dennis makes it, and he's like, I can't talk to this detective. And then yes, and then like as soon as he's out of the way, suddenly like Birdbath is there. It's like just this like it's everything is just like coming at him from this location. And then the Birdbath of it all. I may have a stupid name, but I'm not stupid. It's
But these scenes are so brilliantly orchestrated. The ones with the pipes, where you have people walking way in the distance, and the timing of the dialogue from the people who are right next to him, it's all like so perfectly choreographed in these long scenes.
Yeah, these are like great one shots. I'm jealous of whoever gets to talk to you guys about Rochambeau later on in the series, because that just like that shot just astounds me. Yeah.
How many minutes was it? Like 3 minutes?
I think it might. For some reason, it's in my head as 7, but that's ridiculous. It might be like 3 minutes straight, but yeah. And especially like once you realize that John is doing that entire scene with his left hand, because he had established earlier on that he was like left-handed for some reason. Oh, because his signature had to be different, so he's like doing the whole thing with like his wrong hand. It's just lovely. It just makes me so happy.
He doesn't shy away from like really difficult scenes to shoot.
No, he doesn't.
Like stuff that people would be like, find some shortcut around that or something, but he definitely goes for those things.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, God, I was even thinking about that like during the pilot. Like one of the first shots during the pilot is like a helicopter explosion with the rotors like just like kind of moving across the screen, and I'm like, they had to set that up and put that in the budget and like shoot that for like that one shot.
Right.
And it's like a gorgeous shot, but it is, yeah, like the attention to detail and like the visual storytelling is just amazing. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, so then we get Birdbath giving him a list of tasks that he has to perform that all seem crazy and unrelated, but then we see later how they all fit together.
Connects. Yeah.
The tiny policeman. Yeah, and then Charlie, that's the start of Charlie, the PTSD dog. Who I think keeps John alive throughout the series inadvertently, and then the legs at the pool. I'm saying this like people will understand what I mean by the legs at the pool, but but the legs at the pool.
Yeah, he goes in and steals a bunch of prosthetic
and it's
legs.
It's like a wide shot too. That scene like extreme wide shot, just showing John like snatching all the legs and this show love wide shot, man, and I love that.
Mm-hmm.
And these guys are like veterans that are having a swim class or something.
Yeah, and it's and he mentions that it like he always like manages to give like this like really interesting like little nuggets of backstory or like context. Like I don't even like calling it exposition because it's not really. It's just like little bits of context. Like the reason why okay, you have this task. It's going to work. This is why it's going to work. It's going to work because the Milwaukee Police Department slashed their budgets and they like decreased their like premiums, and now they took everybody who is like maybe a little bit vulnerable out on the street and put them all working in the evidence room so that they wouldn't be like held accountable if something happened to these people. And so like the guy in charge of the evidence locker has like that horrible PTSD, and then the tiny policeman is there, and then there's like a policeman who is an amputee that we find out that's like the third reveal, like, oh, that's why he took the legs, because one of them belonged to this policeman. So sorry for everybody else at that water aerobics session. But yeah, so it's just like these little bits of context that just like fill out the world and just make it it just like enriches everything.
And that scene, I like, it's an infiltration scene, right? In spy films, it usually would use like some crazy score, like suspense. In this in this episode, it used like a heartfelt, like kind of gentle score, and we just never see that, and it's just special. Yeah.
Well, one of the things that I think is so great, like going back to the whole thing about like this kind of like being I don't want to call him like a James Bond because that seems like ridiculous, but like a CIA operative with feelings. When we meet John Langman at the beginning of the series, he is kind of dealing with his own PTSD from this awful like situation that he where he accidentally shot this person who was innocent, and and so for him, you can tell by the look on his face when he has these air horns, like in a lesser show, he would just go in and like, punch the guy or like slam his head on the desk or like do whatever he had to do to like, get this guy incapacitated so he could get in the evidence locker. But instead he has these two air horns, like bottles, that he like, you can see on his face as he's like holding it up to the guy's ears, and then when the guy turns around and reacts, you can see on his face like it like hurts him to be like doing this to this guy.
It's about to cry. Like
the guy's like, why? I mean, he's like, why did he do
that?
It's so sad.
Yeah, and he stuffs the tiny policeman in the locker. And that like right after that whole sequence, like they cut to him on his bike, just like recklessly riding through the streets of Milwaukee, like just riding straight through red lights and like almost getting hit by like multiple cars. And then it ends with him in his air mattress slowly deflating, which is a visual metaphor if I've ever seen one. Yeah, like you can see that like this really affects him. And I that's like yeah. I mean, going into like the family dynamics of it all, the fact that it's like his father who's like putting him into these positions to begin with, and his father and his brother who are supporting him, and but neither of them have like this experience of actually doing this work. And I feel like in season 2 it kind of gets into that a little bit more, like when Tom Tavner actually is like out in the field a little bit and kind of sees what his son has to do and is like, oh shit. But you know, it's always just kind of presented to him as like, well, you just need to get this from point A to point B. That's all you need to do, you know, get the money from here to there. And then it like screws up because of something that's completely not in John's control at all. And it's like, well, all you got to do is get back on the travel team and, you know, get the money from him and then give it to, you know, it's like always presented to him, you know, and his dad, he kind of has like this sense of like, you know, there's a bigger purpose at stake, you know, it's nuclear arms, it's Iran, like blah, blah, blah. But it's like, it's your son that you're putting out there in this position. And I feel like, you know, I mean, the fact that like in the first episode, we learn that there's like a few people, he mentions like there's a few people he could have asked to do this, but he wants it to be John. And I feel like, I feel like with like Tom and Leslie, there's like always like a little bit of like a connection, and it's kind of, you know, that generation and kind of the sort of, it's like they love their kids, but they're kind of like unaware of like the impact their actions have on them in a way, you know, like it's obvious that Tom loves John, you know, but I feel like he kind of knows that he can ask John to do anything and John will do it, you know?
Yeah,
like
I was about to say that. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
he
true.
like, he installed those buttons. So like, you know, whereas if he had brought on somebody else, maybe somebody who was not in Amsterdam getting stoned all the time singing folk songs about his, you know, missteps on top secret missions, like he wouldn't have the same sort of control over the person that he does over his son, which kind of just gives this whole other layer of sadness to the whole thing. But this episode does have all the lovely stuff about Tom Tavner getting poked in the head with a 9-foot dick at a Beastie Boys concert.
Right. I forgot about that.
Yeah, and I love that scene, and like Kubrick was saying that he can keep his cool, right? Whatever happens, Tom doesn't get angry. But when the news come out about Cantarelli like gaining footing, like gaining advantaging, like that moment, like Tom was like lose it, he breaks that cup. Yeah, and that tells a lot about Tom too. Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like we haven't talked about this episode also kind of introduced us more about Cantarelli too, the main so-called bad guy about on this show, and we see that he's like a championship, world championship of battleship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I kept watching those scenes and thinking about, for the first time, like the episode name of like C-19, and like I don't know if there's a C-19 on the board in Battleship, but it's just a dumb little connection. But
I never thought of that.
It was just yeah, I was just thinking about that. I have nowhere to go with that, but I do love the very end when he like finally wins the game and they just show him as a young boy standing up and like doing his little like victory, his little victory fist pumps, and also the fact that he's like a championship at like Battleship, which is all about like basically bombing stuff, and he like grows up to become this like nuclear threat. I just love it. I love it. I love it. I love it.
Yeah,
I love
that's
it.
that's definitely not a mistake.
Yeah.
C19 is Leslie.
Yeah.
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 And at that like when Tom was explaining about Canterbury, I think he also John and Tom also swapped like USB players too, like this small USB players, MP3 players, and that's the first time you see that. That's the unique way of communication between John and Alice. That's the first time you see it, and that's pretty cool. Yeah.
I love this episode too. We get to like learn a little bit more about Alice, and that's like another thing I love about this show. Another thing that I love about this show is that like whenever we meet the female characters, like they also kind of go against the grain a little bit. Like, I mean, her sense of humor in these notes to him, like she's very frustrated by her like inability to see him, and her frustrated by not being able to know what he's doing. But she also like understands, like she doesn't nag about it. She's not like, I need my husband back, you know, like in a lesser show, she would just be like a crying wife, you know, but like she's like entertaining him with like these like ideas about like her app ideas, you know, like, and, you know, and, oh, I made this little note for you, or I made this message for you, you know, I'm in bed, and then it's like her snoring, you know.
You thought it would be like a sex thing, you know, like a sexual thing. That's the show.
They always just do a good job of her, and also like giving her like the agency, you know, during the whole like conversation with Edward and God, I forget his girlfriend's name, Ephraim's mom, and Tom.
Carol, is it?
Carol, yes. And as they're talking, she like notices the Macmillan pen. You know, like she's like doing her own sort of like reconnaissance to like put the pieces together so that she can go check on her husband, because she knows enough not to like totally trust like that Tom is taking care of him, you know. And I just like really appreciate all of that about her character. And the same too with, I mean, this goes into talking about like awesome female characters. We also meet Agatha,
Agath.
Not Agatha, Agath, and Sophie, the Luxembourg detectives. I mean, the whole, what do they call them? Skirts and stockings. The whole Luxembourg, they put all of the women in the homicide department because there's never any homicides in Luxembourg. And now they actually have like 5 cases to solve.
Right.
And the guys.
And the guys are like all like, you know, like giving them like shit about it. But like I love that like the women are actually pretty awesome detectives. And just like even noticing this time around that like one of the first pieces of like they like go to like, they're like, I guess we'll start sorting through this trash, you know, from the hotel, because they needed to find I feel like I'm like a 5-year-old telling a story, like, because Tom Tavener went to his like one of his U.S. government like connections to say we need to make sure that this like can't be prosecuted, so make sure that Luxembourg can't do anything about this crime. And so like strings are pulled, and she goes to like her person, her like, you know, who she needs to go to get her approval to like investigate this American, but they're like, oh, you actually need more than 3 connections for whatever reason with this one, which is because strings have been pulled, you know, but she doesn't know that. And so she goes back to her squad of awesome Luxembourgian ladies to say we need to find like more connections. And so they start going through all the hotel trash. And one of the first things she pulls out is a empty package for Twizzlers, which we just like heard. Yeah, we just heard like a little one-off line in episode 1 of Lawrence ordering some women to his room for some gratification, which could possibly include being slapped on the back of the legs with Twizzlers.
That's such a cool detail.
Yes.
I missed that.
And they treat us like they they don't treat us like they treat us as a smart viewer. It's all there. You just have to to see it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that. Like they don't hold our hand. They let us do it that way. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Wow. I missed that part too. But yeah, we were talking last time about how easy it is to forgive John Lakeman because he is on a mission to save the world. So all these things that he does, like to have a main character who steals the leg of an amputee veteran and stuffs a little guy in a locker and does all these things. I mean, you just think about those things on paper. It's like, this guy's a monster. But I guess,
he stabs Dennis in the thigh and tells him not to go to the hospital. Yeah. No, on paper he would just be, you're right. On paper he'd be a monster, but we see we know the purpose behind it, and we see that he really doesn't want to be doing any of this.
Right. He's doing these terrible things, but we still love him.
Yeah.
Yeah. This episode he was singing a song too. I think it's called Ducks about Stephen injuries. He completely lost his sense of humor and stuff. And about even if he's like a muscular man and good with at home, no one will ever love him because he doesn't get the joke. That's kind of, oh my God, really sad, man.
Yeah. Ugh.
So this I mean, it ends with his bike riding, right? Is that the final scene?
Oh, it's end with Leslie and Ichabod is waiting for John to come park. You want to see something cool, Ichabod?
So this is basically, I mean, kind of almost a half-ass a suicide attempt, right? He rides through the red lights going through town, kind of hoping that he'll get hit.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Which is let's see, I mean,
heartbreaking.
Yeah, that's very telling of what the dude's mental state is.
Yeah, I mean, it starts with Saperstein wanting to tie a noose, and then ends with John recklessly riding his bike through Milwaukee traffic. Yeah, we have a lot of very sad men in this series. Yeah. And then, but the very last shot is him pulling into that parking lot and almost hitting a gaff. Yeah, and seeing
and his face was pretty shocked by a gaff, and probably not because he's almost hit her, but largely probably because that he didn't thought a gaff would be here right now, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, because his dad was supposed to have taken care of it. the strings were pulled. She shouldn't be there. But they did not expect somebody so formidable as her and Sophie, super tag team homicide detectives. So yeah.
So by the end, we've opened up so many different new storylines and new characters. I mean, the task at hand for a writer, the hole that he's dug himself in. I mean, Stephen Conrad, with creating all these characters and all these different storylines. Mm-hmm. I have a lot of respect for that. The fact that he took that.
There's a lot going on, right? There's so many things going on. Like in Luxembourg, in Milwaukee, just back and forth.
Imagine you're sitting down at your computer to write these scripts, and you've got all these storylines that you have to keep in your mind at the same time.
It has to be colored index cards. That's the only thing I can imagine to keep this to keep this straight in terms of timelines. I mean, this episode also introduces the deposition that Tom is giving in 2017. So that footage with which you can tell because it's got the little imprint on the bottom of the screen with the date and everything, and that's him kind of reflecting on everything that's happened. So it's like you have to know where it's ending, you have to know where it's going. Like everything has been written, and yeah, keeping it all straight, and also like I mean, yeah.
I imagine a big giant bulletin board with a bunch of little threads, like a
detective.
Different colors.
yeah.
Yeah. It's incredible. It's really an accomplishment.
Yeah, it's an extremely talented writer with the freedom to fully express himself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which is
You know, like I have like a dream where I have an idea of, you know, PATRIOT never got season 3, right? Like I think the best way to continue to like wrap up the story is through this exposition video, you know, like
Yeah.
I think that would be a pretty cool way because they can, you know, bring back, we can see the actors like live action, and it wouldn't be like distracting too, because that's the medium that tells the story already in the show. So I think that could be the way, but yeah.
It just, the end of the show is just so lovely though. I just feel like as much as I like love everybody and I want to like see more and I want to be in this world more, it's like the way the series ends is just like, it's almost like kind of magical. And spoiler alert about the end of the series, just like him on that boat, you know, and just like finally being able to like take a breath, like after this just, you know, exhausting 20 episodes of television. It just, yeah, I don't know. I kind of like, I like the place where we leave him.
Yeah.
it's kind of romantic.
Yeah.
And we it's nice that John finally can stop, you know, for at least for as far as we see it. But you know, season 3 is supposed to be about healing, so
I don't know if you can heal from some of this stuff. I mean, he literally has Dennis's fingers on his hands by the end of the series. So, yeah.
I think prequel is probably the only.
Well, that's
option.
that's one thing I wanted to talk about that I would like. This was like something that hit me this like kind of go around of rewatching this. Just the opening titles are just like so evocative and lovely. And I talked to Steven a little bit about this like in my interview, but like one of the things that I love about this show and all of his shows is that he manages to like write. I talked about like him writing well-rounded female characters, but he also writes incredibly well-rounded like male characters who are like, it's like men who haven't lost touch with their boyhood, you know, where it's like, I feel like there's a thing that happens. There's documentaries about, there's a great documentary called like The Mask We Live In, or The Mask, it's something like that, but it's about how, at least like in American society, boys are kind of conditioned to, as they grow older, to not express their emotions, to not feel feelings, to like hold it in, to only express things that are like deemed masculine, which would be like anger or like, and he manages to write these characters that still, can feel empathy or can feel sadness or can feel excitement and like actually express it, I'm just thinking about Edward sitting there in his like BC Boys License to Ill era tracksuit and like being proud of wearing that tracksuit, like as an adult man for that reason, in this like very sweet way. Or like even Edward, the way that like he talks to Ephraim and the way he like the way he's like so gentle with him, and then John with all of his feelings, Dennis is just a giant kid, and remind me where I started with this point. Remind me where I started.
You started
Wait.
with you're talking about a
The
book.
opening titles. The
Okay.
opening titles. The combination of we have this like spy show. The main title song for season 1 is like a female folk singer, like a female like Indian folk singer, you know, and it's this very like haunting, lovely song.
Train song.
Yeah, it has this like sense of, it has this like sense of like nostalgia. I said she was Indian. I don't know if she's Indian. I think she's Indian. Correct me. But anyways, it has this like sense of nostalgia to it. The credits themselves are all just like home video of like presumably like John and Edward when they're boys, and kind of like just like showing the sort of like you know, nonsense that they get up to as little boys, you know, like riding around on their BMX bikes, you know, jumping around, the missing teeth.
Foreshadowing?
Yeah, like
Yeah,
so much
lots of
foreshadowing.
foreshadowing.
Yeah, so much foreshadowing. And then throughout all of this, like there is that moment, guys, I'm getting like so like English lit student about this, but there's like that moment at the very end where the only sound we hear from this video is when the boy, who I'm going to assume is John, is like fires a rifle. Like that's the only sound we hear from any of this footage is a gunshot. And I feel like it just is this like, I feel like it's like almost like a thesis for like the series. It's like John, like he's going through all of this, but like trying not to lose who he is in the process of all of it. You know, that's why he writes his music. That's why he like has to do that. He has to like process these feelings. He's doing all these things that probably like nobody would ever want to do unless you're a sociopath. And I don't think he is. And so it's like hanging on to that part of yourself, you know, that like your inner child, right? Like trying to like stay connected to that and hang on to that, because that's like your core self. That's who you are, while having to like live this life that's like very violent and very, you know, stressful, and causes you to have to take all these actions that are harmful to people. Yeah, it's just the main titles themselves are just like chef's kiss. Like, love it.
I think it's my all-time favorite like opening title.
Yeah,
it's perfect, and I just realized that there's this scene where like John and Edward was like drifting, like donut drifting, and it's a circle. I'm not sure if I overthink it, but it's circle.
Yeah, it's like going around in circles, just like chasing their tails. Yeah.
And like you were saying about Kubrick, like authentic Beastie Boy tracksuit, right? It reminded me of something. I really love the conversation like that Alice and Ed had, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he talks about how like John and Tom got their own thing. They're folk singers, like daddy and son, right? But Kubrick is like not musical in their way, but musical in a way that he can, like, he likes beats and fun-loving rhymes. That's so cute. And
yes,
fresh beats and fun-loving rhymes.
It's like they've all managed to hang on to this like sweetness that you have when you're a kid, and that little boys have, like, you know, like when you like I grew up with like all male cousins and brother, you know, I have a brother and like all male cousins. I was like the only girl, and like they're like, when we were kids, everybody was so sweet. And then like the older you get, like the more closed off everybody gets, walls get put up. Like even the way John sometimes, the character, he can't, like, he's so walled off and he's so closed off that he, like, sometimes it's like he's like struggling just to get like the sound of a word out, you know, like he can't even it's like painful for him to be talking, but like not in a like later on in the series, it's like physically painful for him to be talking, but it's like emotionally painful for him to be talking. You know, I feel like that's like something that like as like not a guy that I've witnessed among, you know, people I grew up with or like whatever, like just kind of like as they get older, it's just kind of becomes like this really like kind of closed off it's just like a sort of, you know, I don't want to say like a painful existence, but like it's hard when you don't have the freedom to be expressive with your emotions. Like it's hard to live life like that. It's hard to be a happy person, I imagine, if you're not able to access all of that, you know, and express all of that.
That reminds me of when he asked him if he's a McMillan man, and he's just forcing that. Oh man, yeah.
Oh, man, yeah.
Like, he doesn't want to say that.
And he smiles the way he smiles too.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Guys, I'm gonna have to wrap this up. That flew by really fast.
This was so fun.
Yeah,
Thank you for having me on. I was so excited when I saw the art. As soon as I saw the artwork in my Instagram feed, I was like, because I didn't even have to like look at what you were doing. I just saw that. I was like, oh, Mike, it's amazing. It made me so happy.
Thank you so much.
So yeah, thanks for having me on. And if you, you know, if you ever just want to chat about John Lakeman or whatever. Why am I like wrapping this? You wrap up your podcast. I need to wrap up the podcast. Right. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's it.
Man. I mean, not every day we got like a podcaster on here. Like that's not Joe. So yeah, I mean,
that's nice.
Couldn't hurt. Yeah, it's nice.
Well, Joe, why don't you let everybody know where they can find you?
Oh, well, they know where they can find me if they're on here. Okay. Well, what about you? Yeah, since you're the guest.
I need to get my podcast started back up. Season 2 of LADYHD should be coming out at some point in the near future. I was like, I'm going to take a few months off, and it's been like a year. But so you can listen to my podcast, LADYHD, on any of the podcasting things, or follow me on social media. It's Jenn Welch now, like Jen with 2 N's, Welch like the grape juice, and now like right now. So yeah.
All right. Well,
cool.
I really appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me. This is so exciting. I love talking about this stuff. Yes, anytime.
Okay. Yeah, we have a lot of grounds to cover. We got 2 seasons. Plus, we're gonna do some just interviews too with
specials.
So we'll be in touch.
Very cool. Can't wait to hear it all. Awesome.
Right.
Keep double grade, you guys.
Yes.
All right. Thanks everybody for coming on.
Cool.
See ya.
All right. Talk to you guys soon.
See you, Jen.
Bye.
All right. Bye.
Bye.